The fighting between Israel and Palestinian militants is now in its 7th week. And for more on this, Phyllis Bennis joins me now. She directs the new Internationalism Project at the Institute of Policy Studies, which primarily focuses on the Middle East and United Nations issues. And Phyllis, as always, welcome back to our broadcast, and thanks for coming in. Do you believe this is somewhat good news and a step, obviously, in the right direction?
It's a step. We'll see how far it goes. I think perhaps a more important step is the decision by Hamas to officially sign on to what they had only informally agreed to in the past, which is support for the Palestinians going to the International Criminal Court and joining the court as a member state of the Rome Treaty. This is something that has been possible since a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, since the General Assembly of the United Nations recognized Palestine as a state, albeit a non-member state of the United Nations, but nonetheless a state. That gives them the ability to join the International Criminal Court. If that happens, it could be the beginning of real investigation into the war crimes that have clearly been committed in Gaza during this recent period.
You know, over the last 24 hours or so, we've seen temporary truces being broken. 3 top Hamas leaders have been killed. Israel is talking about getting another 10,000 reservists involved in all of this. Does Hamas really have any choice at this point?
You know, I think Hamas is faced with a number of pressures. It needs to engage in ceasefire talks because people can't survive like this forever. But the pressures on Hamas inside Gaza are very strong not to stop the resistance. People are saying, even people who traditionally had said, I don't believe in armed struggle, I don't think it's going to work, I don't think this is the way, are now saying, we don't have a choice now. We have lost so much. We can't stop now if we don't get the ability to breathe. So I think all of the possible components of what a final solution will look like, which have to include reopening the seaport, allowing the fishermen out, restarting the airport, all of those things, all of those can be negotiated over time. But what has to happen immediately is the opening of the border crossings into Israel and into Egypt to allow free passage, allow Gazans to breathe. That will allow a very different scenario in terms of the possibility for real negotiations.
And let's talk about, Phyllis, the humanitarian situation. At least 300,000 people displaced. Yeah. School was supposed to open on Sunday for a lot of the Gazans. No way it will. Where do you go from here, and what should the UN do with the humanitarian situation?
Susan, this is the most disastrous humanitarian crisis I think Gaza has ever seen since 1948, when the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians in the context of the establishment of the State of Israel led to the refugee crisis that is now 80% of the population of Gaza. The situation is far worse than any of the other Israeli assaults. The early estimates that this was something like $6 billion worth of damage, already significantly more than even during Operation Cast Lead, that at $4 billion was by far the biggest debt that had ever been imagined. Now people are saying that $6 billion is way too low, and it's significantly more than that. There are, as you mentioned, hundreds of thousands of people whose homes have been demolished. The question of rebuilding schools, clinics, and hospitals, as well as the power plant and the water treatment plant and sewage treatment plants, has to go first. What will happen to people's individual homes, that is so far down the line on when there will be money available. The tradition here is Europe comes in and says, we'll pay to rebuild, and then they stand back while Israel continues to bomb again and destroy again, and Europe comes back and says, we will pay again. This isn't going to work this time, and I think what we're seeing that's different is that the Europeans are putting more pressure on Israel, and there's even a hint of a little bit of pressure coming from the United States. It's not much, but the fact that the Obama administration announced that they would no longer allow one particular kind of rockets, the Hellfire missiles, Hellfire missiles to be sent to Israel, because they thought those decisions were being made by the Pentagon without political oversight, that they were not going to allow those missiles to be sent anymore. That's the first time that's ever happened.
Well, that's a blink by the United States.
Absolutely. That's very important. It may not go very far. They may say, well, now that we're watching more carefully, we will allow them. We will approve them. That's a possibility. But the symbolism of it is very, very important.
Phyllis Bennis, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. All your insight, as always.